As we've been highlighting, in some corners of Trump world, there are prominent conservatives who recognize on a deep level that Donald Trump's economic policies are outright disastrous. And one Fox News host in particular, Steve Doocy, has been going off script fairly regularly regarding Trump's tariffs, actually criticizing Trump and the Trump administration, and he did so again recently, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, I got a couple of clips to play here. Again, tracking the reaction that conservatives and people in right-wing media have to Donald Trump's tariffs, because as we've seen from the National Review and the Wall Street Journal, an increasing number of so-called principled conservatives are actually starting to flex a little bit and say, you know what, this is a really bad idea. Here, Steve Doocy actually uses an example, a personal example of somebody he knows and cares about who has suffered materially and directly as a direct consequence of Donald Trump.
When the news broke yesterday that there would be a carve out for smartphones and computers and stuff like that, Nvidia and Apple, suddenly the stock futures went up for them because that would be really good news for them. But then it was a turnaround. Well, hold on, there still is going to be a tariff. It's very clear that, if you're one of those people who watches the ticker at the bottom of the frame, or you're thinking about your 401k, this is going to be a bad week to look at that. But we have heard, to your point about Scott Bessent, we've heard him talk about the time frame. How long is it going to be bumpy? And it's going to be bumpy this week. It's going to be another really bumpy week. But he has suggested, in things he said last week, it sounds like it's going to be about 80, 90 days, should be over by June. Early June is kind of what he said in one of those availabilities out in front of the White House. If people know that it's only going to last until June, and then the market comes back, that would be good. My wife and I have a friend, Michelle. She is a widower, and she has her life savings in a bank account in the stock market. So far, she's lost 18% of her life savings. And so she is ready. She understands what the president's trying to do, rebalance trade, but she's ready for it to come back. And that's what they're saying. It's going to come back, and we all hope that's true.
Yeah, imagine if all these jobs come to America, if we start making...
Now, of course, then you have Ainsley Earhardt saying, oh, what about these jobs? Okay, well, number one, there's no guarantee that will happen. Trump made similar promises in his first term and failed to deliver materially. But there's Steve Doocy saying, hey, listen, somebody that I know has been personally harmed by this. Now, of course, he's still doing the common Fox News talking point. We understand what Donald Trump is doing, and he says it's only 60 or 90 days, so hopefully that's going to happen. That's his way of, to whatever extent he has any influence over Donald Trump, and of course Trump is an avid consumer of Fox News. He's like, hey Donald, you've only got a couple of months, man. Come on, hurry up. Let's deliver the results or change course. And it's actually not the first time that Steve Doocy over the past several weeks has again, deviated from the typical MAGA Fox host script. Okay, so I want to play another example in which he did so.
If you look at some of the numbers, as far as China is concerned, U.S. exports $143.5 billion to China. U.S. imports $438.9 billion from China. So that's a deficit of $295.4 billion, leaving the United States, the president says, in the red.
Yeah. There's an item in the New York Post that we all have in front of us. It's an exclusive story, and it talks about how with these 104% tariffs that went into effect, we think that China is going to have to pay for it, but it tells a story of a special needs toy importer. And when the tariffs went into effect at midnight, his tariff, he's been paying a tariff because he gets stuff from China, $26,000 a year. His tariff bill went from $26,000 at midnight to $346,000. And that's money he's going to have to come out of his pocket. It sounds like he's going to have to go ahead and close down part of his business. He tried to make the toys in the United States, but the tariff on that, his most popular item, went from $0 to $17 at midnight. And what he told the New York Post is people don't understand the tariff situation. They think just foreign countries are paying for the tariffs. That's not true. Half of the tariffs are being paid for by U.S.-based companies. Yeah. So when you look at the big numbers.
So I just want to say this. Did you see Lawrence Jones there look at the camera like, oh, my God, he's going off script? What are you talking about? Brian Kilmeade's looking down. Ainsley Earhardt's looking at him. They're obviously uncomfortable with, again, Steve Doocy deviating from the script. Like, no, you stick to the script. tariffs are not taxes. Tariffs are the most beautiful word in all the English language, and they're going to help people. People are going to love tariffs. And instead, Steve Doocy has been relatively consistent, saying no, and providing very specific anecdotes, right? Because we've all seen the facts and figures. MAGA dismisses them out of hand. Trump dismisses them out of hand. So he's trying to use personal anecdotes to appeal to people's sense of empathy and sympathy. But he's doing so with MAGA Fox hosts at Fox News, and that's not going to work.
And they look good. Just remember that, according to this guy, half of the small businesses and half of the tariffs are being paid by Americans.
Well, I'll say this. I'm still holding back judgment on this because I feel like we may be missing something here. And the way I look at it is I have two groups of friends. I have my more wealthy friends, the ones that are on Wall Street and all that. And then I have my friends that are in the farming community, middle class. They're cheering it on. Yeah. Meanwhile, my friends that are more rich and wealthy are ticked off. Huh. And so look, I watched the president yesterday, even with those miners yesterday, and they're cheering him on as well. Sure. I think the elites have gotten used to a certain lifestyle and what we're invested in the market and all that. But he's
so funny because, again, it's actually middle and lower class Americans who will hurt the most by definition because they're the ones who have to pay the tariffs on this. Wealthier people can afford to pay exorbitant tariffs because they have more money with which to pay it, right? But it's not like when the tariffs go up, your wages go up to scale, right? That's the point. Your wages stay what they are, and the amount of money you have to pay to get this stuff done, that's the problem. It's so fascinating to me, like the lack of empathy from people. I want to play another part of this clip before we play the third one.
He said they asked, what about China? He said, they're proud people, so they want to negotiate. They're just not. We're working on that now. But and Jamison Greer yesterday, when he testified to the senators, he said, to your point, Steve, to your toy maker, it may be challenging at times, and in a moment of drastic overdue change.
Well, the problem is, like that guy in Idaho, he might have to go out of business.
Well,
and so that's why it's so important
that you reconfigure all the trade. Give you an example. What about the shrimping company?
Again, they just don't care. And what's so fascinating is if this happened under President Biden, they absolutely would care 100%. But because it's Donald Trump, they grade him on a separate standard. Play one more clip again of Steve Doocy just to make the point.
So, Chad, given the fact that China is now going to have an 84% tariff on U.S. goods, I see the stock market futures. Market's going to open in 90 minutes. They're down like 600 or 700 points again. How much pressure are Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill getting from their constituents? And a lot of them have major donors who are invested in the stock market, and they're terrified.
Yeah, well, you're starting to hear some of that. Some of them will concede that privately, but again, most of them publicly will say, look, we're willing to give him that runway, as I said a bit ago. They want to see if this will work. This is where I thought this was kind of...
And of course, we've seen this. That was the least recent clip. And again, Steve Doocy, though, sounding the alarm about people freaking out, particularly Republican donors, which could create political consequences for these Republican lawmakers who don't enjoy the benefit of Trump's cult of personality. Again, so what we're seeing here is, in his own way, Steve Doocy is trying to put pressure on Donald Trump, put pressure on MAGA top officials in the Trump administration to either vastly improve their rhetoric surrounding the tariff war or to walk back or modify the tariff war altogether. Again, I'm not suggesting that Steve Doocy deserves a Medal of Honor by this, but I think it is interesting that he has been consistently over the past few weeks being the but kind of guy, the guy effectively tempering the typical MAGA cultish rhetoric of his three MAGA co-hosts. So it's very interesting to me. Again, there's no telling where he'll be in a week, but just want to draw attention to the few pockets of criticism that we've seen in right-wing media of Trump's tariffs. And I want to bring it to your attention. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.